Hello there, you beautiful soul. Welcome back to another Culture Talks conversation with Rebecca Munoz, your host and founder of Cultured Society. I am here with my beautiful guest, Bonnie Moehle, who has been with me for the month of March. And now, since we're in the month of April already, I can't even believe that we're in 2021 and in the fourth month of a new year. Time is going by so fast. And it's just interesting how, even though time is passing us by, it gives us the opportunity to really practice the art of being in the now. And this gives us really an opportunity to appreciate everything that we're going through, everything that we are, and everything that is going to come flowing into our experience as we move forward and maneuver through all the changes that are happening in our life as we evolve and as we change, as we transform. So, Bonnie Moehle, if you have not been with me in this series, she is a self-realization coach based out of Phoenix, Arizona, with over 20 years of experience in personal, relationship, and executive coaching. She's also a published author, workshop facilitator, and public speaker. Bonnie has been helping people shift their perspectives by providing a non-judgmental, supportive environment and the tools that truly impact the outcomes of everyday circumstances. So today we are here to speak about the power of now and how being in the now can really shift our perspective and allow us again to appreciate everything that we're experiencing currently and to leave behind the history that happened earlier today and yesterday so that we can just be in more gratitude, again, appreciation and the love for the life that we are living every single second of the day. So today I pass the mic on to Miss Bonnie Moehle, and thank you so much for joining me again today, Bonnie.
Oh, it is my pleasure. And I'm so excited about talking about presence or being in the now. Sometimes people say, Bonnie, if I only had time to do a couple of sessions with you, what would be the most important thing that you could teach me? And I do kind of have to go back and forth on that between, what's going on in the subconscious mind. But I really have to say that my number one vote would be learning how to be present and be in the now. And a couple things that I want to get clear. So being in the now is not about your current life situation. Being in the now is not about what's happening this month or this week or today. Being in the now is actually about what I am experiencing in this very moment. And of course, the mind hates that because the mind just wants to be chattering all the time and always be in charge. And so what happens, and this is one of the struggles, and we're going to kind of talk about what the struggles are with being in the now, but one of the struggles is that mind is going to fight you on being in the now, because being in the now quiets the mind. You're in stillness, you're not in the mind, you're not in thought. And the mind, again, wants to be at the forefront and wants to be in charge. So the mind's very cunning about how it, tries to get you to not be in the now. And it'll tell you things such as, being in the now is a waste of time. Being in the now, you're not troubleshooting. Being in the now, you're not figuring things out. So why would you want to be in the now? Don't do that. That's a waste. You should be in the head and you should be figuring it out and troubleshooting and planning and all of that. So what we're going to address first is maybe I like to call it a little ammunition to battle your own mind when it says don't be in the now. And we're going to talk about why would you even want to bother with being in the now? Because it's a practice and it's not something that we're used to, and it's not something that we do on a regular basis. Although we do it spontaneously sometimes without realizing we're doing it, like, if we're creating or if we're gardening or if we're having great sex. These are some of the times that we get present without being conscious that we're choosing to be present. But most of the time we're just in our heads. Yes. And the way that I like to look at being in your head is being in your head is like thinking your life, whereas being in the now is experiencing your life. And that's the difference between the two. And, I once read a book by Don Miguel Ruiz, author of Four Agreements. And I'm not sure if it's in the Four Agreements or in his other book, Mastery of Love. But he says, we're living in a dream. And when I first read that, probably 20 years ago, I thought, okay, what does he mean by that? And then I had this realization, because I was reflecting on myself as I was sitting with that. 99.99999% of the time, I am in my head thinking about the past and the future.
Yes.
And I'm calling that my life, when in reality, that's not my life at all. The past doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yes.
Future does not exist. I'm making it up in my head, but that's where I was all the time. Past, future, calling that my life, because I was so in it so frequently that that's really all I was knowing as my life. And what I came to realize is, and by the way, that moment when that struck me was like one of these moments. Whoa. It was like really a whoa moment for me. Like, oh my gosh, I'm not experiencing my life. I'm thinking my life, and I'm thinking about things that don't even exist and calling that my life. So being in the now is about experiencing your life, not about what we do usually, which is thinking your life. So with all of that in mind, because being present is hard to do, and because your mind is going to fight you on it, how do we fight back? Well, you got to know why you want to be in the now. So I have kind of boiled it down to 3 reasons why I want to be in the now. The first reason is because if I'm in the now, there aren't any problems. There aren't any problems if I'm in the now. And why aren't there any problems? Because in the now, the only thing that exists is what you are experiencing right now. So you can't have a problem, because problems only come from the mind creating a problem.
Yes.
Meditating on something and thinking about it and worrying about it and projecting. I once read a book, and the title says it all. The title is "What's Wrong with Right Now Unless You Think About It." And it's so true. If you're truly in the present, then basically you're in this moment, and then you're in this moment, and then you're in this moment. This moment's already gone, even though it was only like milliseconds before, but it's already gone. And then you're in this moment, and you're just experiencing your life. And so if you're just in experience, there can't be a problem. And, I have clients that sometimes say to me, well, what do you mean there are no problems? What if I'm sick? I'll say, well, what do you mean? Well, last time I was sick for 8 days, and my boss got really angry at me, and I almost got fired, and so passed, right? And what if this time I'm sick, and I'm sick again for 8 days, and my boss gets mad again, and this time he fires me, and then I can't find another job, and then I become homeless, and then I die? What if? And that's where the mind wants to go, right? It just wants to project and figure out and try to protect itself. And by the way, this is one of the reasons we're always projecting in the future. We think it's going to protect us, but it doesn't. It just makes us do things that really get in our way. So there are no problems in the now. There just is whatever I'm experiencing in this moment. And one of the things that I found comforting was to remember that, the only certainty in life is that things will change. And we know they'll change. So whatever's going on in this moment is going to change.
Sure.
And I found that comforting because, of course, the mind always wants to go to the negative. And, well, if I'm only experiencing what's happening in the moment, what if it's bad, or what if it's a problem? Again, it's only bad and it's only a problem if your mind explains to you why it's bad and why it's a problem. If you're in the now, it's just this experience and then this experience and then this experience. And I love that. And so one of the things that really attracts me to this idea that there are no problems in the now comes from an experience I actually had with being in the now, where, the mind could go to, this is a huge problem. So years ago, my darling husband was in the hospital, and he had a very high fever, and they couldn't get it down, and they couldn't quite figure out exactly what was causing the problem. And I noticed that I started to get really upset, worked up in my head. Now, the first thing I did is I used some of the tools that I talked about when we talked about grief, just kind of working through what was going on in my head and why it was creating this uncomfortable feeling in my body. Well, once I was able to kind of shift the feeling and shift my thinking, I got in the now and found that that was the most effective thing of all. And why? Because if you're in a hospital with somebody and they have 105 fever, yes, you could worry and fear and freak out, or you can be present. And here's what happens in the present. And I keep doing this because I'm kind of pretending like I'm a clock, okay? I'm time. So when I was in the now, basically all that was happening is right now, my husband has 105 fever. Right now, my husband has 105 fever. Right now, my husband's cracking up the nursing staff. Right now, and he did. He's a funny guy. Right now, my husband has 105 fever. And as long as I stayed in the now, the only thing that was happening was what was happening in that moment, which meant that I could not project this big problem or this big fear. And so all I was doing was experiencing that moment. Now, because I wasn't projecting this big fear, this big potential issue or problem, I was peaceful. And when you have a spouse in the hospital, you are their advocate. And if you are not peaceful and you're all worried and you're fearful, you become Wifezilla. Somebody get in here! Where's the nurse? How come the doctor hasn't come in? Right? But because I was present, we got so much attention. It was peaceful in our room. They kept wanting to come in and talk to us, hang with us. So it's funny how we think that through control and anger, that's how we're going to get, the attention that we need. No, it was when we were in the present moment, when it was peaceful, all of a sudden everybody wanted to hang out with us. So we got lots of attention. So that was the first thing. Secondly, when you are with somebody in the hospital and they're sick and scared themselves, if you're scared, how does that affect them? Versus if you're at peace, now they feel more confident, they feel more comfortable, and you have the opportunity to help their healing process as well. So I just thought I'd throw that in because for me, that's such a perfect example in my own experience of what happened when I chose to be present rather than using my mind to try to figure everything out and troubleshoot and know what was going on and know what to do. So that's the first reason why you want to be in the now. And the only thing I want to point out in addition to what I just shared with you is the past and future, they don't exist. They're illusions. I know I said it before, but they're illusions. They don't exist. An illusion is something you think is there, but it's not. And so again, this is how we're living our life. And even when we're creating problems, well, what if this happens and what if that happens? It's just an illusion. It doesn't exist. We're making it up. And infinite possibility of what could happen in the next second. And we have no idea what that is. And as long as we stay in the present moment, we're relaxed, we're at peace. And sure enough, everything just falls into place exactly the way it needs to. So the first reason why I like to be in the now and how I convince myself to practice being in the present moment is to remind myself that in the now there's only what is and no problems and no fears and no guilt and no should have, would have, could have, and no future troubleshooting and all of that. Okay. So that's my first reason. My second reason is because life is amazing when you're in the now. You smell every scent and feel every touch and hear every sound, and it's just amazing. It's amazing how you experience life. It's kind of like a baby. If you watch a baby, there's right? They're so present. They're not thinking. You know, it reminds me of a story about how one time I was in the post office and there was a little boy, and he had this rattle and he's shaking, and it's shaped like a hammer, the rattle. And the rattle's making a noise. And the little boy's like, whoa. And I'm watching him and I'm thinking, oh, look at how present he is. He wasn't thinking, oh, yesterday I pooped in my pants. I think I'll beat myself up. And he wasn't thinking, oh, tomorrow I have to go to daycare. I don't wanna. No, he wasn't thinking. He was present. He was experiencing that when my hand goes like that, that makes a noise. Whoa. And this is how we actually were intended to experience life. But we don't, because we got in our heads somehow, somewhere along the way. And so we are not experiencing life. We're experiencing thoughts and what we're thinking about life and what our perceptions and estimations of life are, rather than what the actual experience is, just like that little boy in the post office. Okay. Now, you know how I said life is amazing when you're in the now? Here's another reason why life is amazing when you're in the now. Now is our natural state. Presence is our natural state. And when you are in your natural state, you are in love, you are in joy, you are in peace, you feel more vibrant. And so again, you know, I said life is more amazing when you're in the now, right there. Every time you step into the present moment, you can feel that love, you can feel that joy, you can feel that peace. And so life is amazing. John Lennon wrote a song, and in the song, one of the lyrics is, life is what happens when we're busy making plans. In other words, we're so busy in our heads that we miss life. And we're calling this life. So, good example of this. Have you ever driven somewhere and when you got there, you didn't even remember the drive? Or, oh, I'm here. How did I get here? Ever happened to you, Rebecca? Yeah. And why? Because we're so in our heads that we're not even paying attention. When I started practicing presence while in the car, driving started to become an amazing experience on so many levels. And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But one thing that I want to say, there were things on my own street that I had passed thousands of times. And it was so in my head, I never even noticed them. But when I started to practice presence, I could not believe what I was being surrounded by, the beauty that I was being surrounded by. Something else that goes along with this second reason is, you know, the idea of boredom. If you're present and you practice presence, you cannot be bored.
Right.
Ever. I actually remember a client once asking me, you know, that sounds really boring, you know, being in the now. It's like, no, it is absolutely the opposite of boring. Think about all the stimuli that is around us and what we can take in and feel and hear and smell and taste and touch and experience when we're in the now. And so if you're feeling bored, pull yourself into presence. It's amazing. And you can't be bored.
I completely agree. I completely agree. I like to call that being in the surrendering and being in the state of flow.
Yeah, exactly. So any questions or comments, Rebecca, on what I'm saying so far, anything that you want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, right before this call, I went outside. I love to ground myself I love to go outside with no shoes. If I had a choice, I would be barefoot all the time. And I love to go outside because there's a ton of grass, especially now that we're going into spring and it's green, you know, it's beautiful outside. And I love to walk out without my shoes, ground myself in the grass, just admire and listen to everything around me, listening to the birds, you know, experiencing the sun and not being in my head thinking about all the things that I have to do or what happened earlier today or what happened yesterday. Literally just being in complete appreciation for what's happening around me and within me. Because when you're in surrender and in the state of flow and appreciation, you're literally able to feel every part of your body, like electricity flowing through you. And it speaks to you and it tells you what to do next. And I
Exactly.
love that. I love that because you really do get to experience life at its fullest. And there's so much to experience in this life just by being present and like listening, just listening to what's going on around you and not being inside your head all the time.
Yes, so true. And so that kind of leads me to the third reason why I love being in the now. And maybe this is my big kahuna of reasons. The number one reason why I want to be in the now. And that's because when I'm present, I do feel that connection with all that is. And because I feel that connection, I also feel like I am a receiver, like I have opened myself up to being able to hear. So, in other words, we have divine inspiration available to us all the time. It's just that we don't hear it because we're so busy in our heads that we don't have room to be able to hear divine inspiration. In other words, knowing or intuition or inspired doing. Okay, we have all of that available to us. But the only way we can really access it is through presence. But I notice when I get present, I know things I didn't know. And I know things I didn't know I didn't know. And I'm more creative and I'm more tuned in. And, one of the things when I think about the ego versus presence, I once heard an acronym for ego, EGO, edge God out.
Mm.
In the context of what I'm sharing here, edge got out is how can I hear divine inspiration if I don't shut up? I need to quiet myself down so I can hear it. I feel like we are vessels that are here to receive knowing and inspired action and all of that. But I like to think of it like a bucket. We're like a bucket, and every time we think, we're putting something in the bucket. We're filling the bucket, and we're always filling the bucket. So the bucket's full all the way to the top. So then there's this divine inspiration that we have available to us, but there's no room in the bucket, so we don't hear it. So again, why do I love being in the now? Because you empty your bucket and you open yourself up to being able to receive and being able to hear and being able to know. Okay. So I kind of liken the ego to a computer in 1994 and presence to a computer now. It's my little analogy. So in 1994, the computer only had what you programmed into it.
Yes.
And back in 1994, it was like the Sims game and Mario Brothers, and We're in the World of Carmen San Diego, and Word, and You Got Mail, AOL, and that was pretty much it. Right. Okay, so in other words, when we use our minds, we are limited. We're limited to what we've seen, what we've heard, what we've read in our lifetime. And that's all we have access to when we use our mind to figure out a problem or an answer, a knowing, or what do we do next, versus a computer now. A computer now, we have infinite access to infinite possibility. And this is what happens when you get present. Good?
Love that.
So, when we're in the now, we play life like an athlete in the zone. An athlete in the zone plays their best when they're in the zone, right? And the reason is because they're not in their head thinking about what they did yesterday, and they're not creating an idea of what's going to happen next. An athlete in the zone plays their best because instead of thinking, they're responding to what is actually happening. Okay, versus I'm going to figure out what I think is going to happen, and then I'm going to respond to what I'm thinking is going to happen. Not as effective. Versus I'm in the present moment, I'm in the zone. And what happens now, I'm just responding to what is happening, and I become so much more effective. And this is true about life too. I've worked with a lot of attorneys over the years. They said, well, what about in the courtroom? I got to be prepared. And it's like, well, yes, know your material, but get in the now. And then I've had attorneys after I've taught them that to come back and tell me, wow, I cannot wait to hear what I'm going to say next. I'm amazed at what comes out of my mouth because I'm just so in the zone. And instead of pre-preparing and figuring out what I'm going to say in advance, I'm actually responding to what the other attorneys are saying and what's happening in the courtroom and what the looks on the faces of the juries are. And I become so much more effective if I can be in the present moment. Okay.
Yep. You're very right. And it's almost as though, because we are living vessels, it's almost as though we're channeling through every second that we're experiencing. So literally words can flow right through us without us overthinking, over analyzing. We don't have room to stop and think about what we're going to say. It's literally just spewing out.
Yeah. And even the actions you take, the things that you say, the things that you do and choose to do, if you're in the present, a lot of times when people hear the first two reasons why to be present, or they think about the idea of present, they think, oh, I'm just sitting around being present, meditating and being present. No, you can be actively present in everything that you can do while you're driving in the car, while you're eating your food, while you're talking on the phone, while I'm talking to you. And things literally just flow right through you. You know where to go. You know what to do. You know what to say. And you're so much more effective when you operate from that place. So again, this is like my big kahuna. Why do I want to be in the now? Every time I get in the now, I empty my bucket. Every time I empty my bucket, I've made room for myself to hear and to know and to be in that flow. I've done a lot of public speaking, and I probably years ago when I first started speaking, I would kind of follow a script. But once I learned and I was really clear on presence, I have a general outline and I just get up and whatever comes out of my mouth comes out of my mouth. And I'll tell you, sometimes, or most of the time after a talk, people will come up to me and say, how did you know to say that? You read my mind. Are you saying it? And sure enough, the thing that they were telling me that about would not have even been on my agenda if I had thought about it and planned it out. But it just came through. And so this is the beauty of presence, is you just know where to go. You know what to do. All of your actions come through inspiration. Here's another example of that. Being overwhelmed. So whenever in the past I used to get overwhelmed, first I would use some of the tools, again, that we talked about in some of our earlier meetings here. But then I would just get in the present moment. Now, I'm going to share with you the difference between being overwhelmed and using the ego and being overwhelmed and being present, okay? Well, and of course, once you're present, you're not overwhelmed anymore, but I want to share with you what happens. So you've got this list of things to do. And the ego will tackle it like this. Oh, I better do number one because I can't do number two until I do number one. And then I better do number three. And oh my gosh, it's 4 o'clock and I don't have time and I'm never going to get number 4 done. And that's how we do it when we are in ego. But if you're in the present moment and you have a belief, I get everything done. I always get everything done. I get it done easily and effortlessly and in divine time. And then you stay present. You still have that same list, right? But here's what happens. Maybe you feel like doing nothing, so you do nothing. But then because you do nothing, you feel a little energized. So you walk into your office, and because you're present, you notice that everything that you need in order to get number 4 on your list done is right in front of you. And because it's right there and you notice it, you're present, it happens effortlessly. And then because you're energized, you walk into your kitchen, same thing happens. You notice that everything you need in order to do number 7 on your list right there. and you take care of it, and it's effortless because it's being inspired through presence. And you may wake up in the morning and be in your ego and think, oh my gosh, I've got such a busy day and how am I going to get everything done? But just tell yourself that I always get everything done, and then you stay present. And somehow you manage to find a time to do number 5 and number 2 and number 7 and number 8 and number 1, and it all gets done. And you're literally in the flow, and it's just happening through you all day long. And this is one of the bonuses of being in the now. Okay. So also being in the now is a state of surrender. It's a state of surrender. So you know how we all hear things like give it to God or let go, let God. Have you heard that? Okay. And it's like, well, okay, what does that mean? How do I do that? How? Be present. Say you have a really big dilemma and you don't know the answer and you're trying to figure it out. And of course, the limited mind can't figure it out because it only knows what it's seen and heard in your life. And so it's not coming up with an answer. And you're freaking out because you have this dilemma. Get in the now. One of two things will happen if you get in the now. Either you will get an answer that is more brilliant than anything your mind could ever have come up with, or a knowing or an action that you'll take, or it'll just kind of happen spontaneously. Or you'll get no answer. And if you get no answer, why are you getting no answer? Because the answer is stop thinking that cockamamie stuff that's going on in your head and just get in the now.
Yeah.
And either way, you're in a state of surrender and you get what you need. So for all these reasons, I love presence. And I practice it every single morning before I even get out of bed. I just do like a 20-minute presence meditation. I don't know if you would call it a mindful meditation, but I just stay really, really present. And I wake up that way with an empty bucket. And that's how I start my day. And then throughout the course of the day, again, I try as many times a day as I can to pull myself into presence. I use just everyday activities to, be present in. So, if I'm drinking water, I'll just be really present. Experience the water. And so, you can do it. It's not like something where you have to take time out of your day to do it during your day. But what happens? You feel alive, you feel joy, you feel in your natural state, you feel peace, you don't have any problems. Life is amazing. And then you just know what you need to know in the moment you need to know it. Like, what could be better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And would you say that starting your day off that way, where you're acknowledging your breath, you're acknowledging your overall presence, gets you in that state to where you can do it throughout the day?
Yes. I mean, it's definitely a commitment that I've made to myself to practice throughout the course of the day. But yes, I think that once it does take practice. But once you practice, then it gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier, and it gets more comfortable. The other thing is, I think one of the reasons that people don't want to do it is they don't trust it. They feel like if I practice presence, then I'm not using my mind to figure things out, and I'll somehow miss the boat or lose something. And so I'm not trusting presence. But I promise you, you can trust presence. Presence gives you what you need. It creates that opening for you to be connected with whatever you need. So part of it's that trust. I trust it. And so throughout the course of my day, many times a day, I pull myself into this moment, whatever moment I'm in, just to, again, empty my bucket and get out of my head and open up the space for receiving and just be in the stillness and have some peace and feel that joy and aliveness, and it's pretty darn good. And so I think maybe the next question might be, well, how do I practice presence? Right? And so, this I actually learned from Eckhart Tolle. I'm a huge fan of his. He wrote the book, The Power of Now. And he also wrote another book called A New Earth. And again, I can't say enough about him. You know, anybody who is familiar with Tolle may even hear some of his languaging and how I speak, because he's influenced my work so much.
Stillness Speaks is a good one too. Stillness Speaks.
Yes, stillness speaks. I mean, even think about that. Stillness speaks. In other words, when you get out of your head, you're in the now, you're in the stillness. That's when you are opening up to receiving.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, you know, what I started out doing when I first started practicing presence was spending a lot of time using my senses. I actually still do that, using my senses, you know, smelling, hearing, listening. I love going in my backyard and closing my eyes and just listening to the breeze and the birds. And, you know, like you said, being out in nature is really great. If I've had a long day, sometimes I'll turn my television on to channel 919, which is like soft rock. And I just listen and be very, very present to the music, the words, the instrumentals. One thing I want to make clear to anybody who's listening, the minute you add an evaluation or a judgment of whatever it is you're being present to, you're no longer present.
Right.
So
I like to say that it's better to observe versus analyze or judge the situation. Observing really brings you into the now.
correct, because the only way you can truly be an observer is without any kind of judgment. Exactly. So, but you know, I noticed when I first started practicing presence, I would be driving in the car and, oh, well, I'm being present. Look at those clouds. Aren't they beautiful? And it was like, no, that's not really present. Because you're evaluating the clouds and how beautiful they are. And that really is pulling me back into my past and making things relative and compared to and so on. So and what I noticed too is that the mind wants to go, isn't that beautiful? So that you could feel what you feel when you go, oh, isn't that beautiful? But you don't need that when you're present, because you just feel that already. Okay. So practice, you know, using your senses. Some of my favorite places to practice using my senses are in the shower. You know, just really feel the water on my head and smell the smell of the shampoos and, you know, the soaps, and just don't think, just feel and experience. I like practicing presence in the car. And, you know, when I was a little kid, we had like this place by our house called Kittyland. And, you know, they had these little mini roller coasters. And I always thought when I was a little kid that driving would be like the mini roller coasters at Kittyland. Wee, wee, right? And then I became 16, I learned how to drive, but it was in my head. So it wasn't wee, wee, wee until I learned about presence. When you're present and you drive, it is like wee, wee. Because you feel every bump and movement, and driving becomes an amazing experience. And you know, you see everything out in front of you, you fully experience, you feel the air on your face. So I love practicing in the car. I also like practicing when I eat. Taste every flavor, smell every scent, feel the textures. Eating food becomes an orgasmic experience when you're in the now. I used to hate to cook. I decided one day, you know what? You hate to cook. Why? Because you're always thinking about something else you should be doing. What if you just get present when you cook? Get present, cooking becomes an incredible experience. So, you know, the thing that I recommend to start out with is just using your senses. Listen, feel, taste, touch. When you talk to somebody, focus, look them in the eye, hear what they're saying. Don't be thinking about what you're going to say next, because if you do, you miss something. And so I also like to use my breath and follow my breath. And you know, you can breathe and think, or you can breathe and be present. Breathing and being present involves really feeling the air moving into your nostrils and down your windpipe, and feeling your chest expand, and then feeling the chest push the air back up and out, and like really being present to the breath. And this is something you can do easily and effortlessly. You can do it multiple times a day. But what does it do each time you do it? It empties your bucket, clears you out. It puts you in stillness so that you can hear and receive. So these are some ways that I practice. I also have some other practices that are more body oriented, where I'm feeling my body from inside my body.
Mhm.
Okay, so, and if you really focus on your body, you can feel your body from inside your body. Feeling your feet from inside your feet, feel your hands from inside your hands. It's another good way to practice presence and really focus on awareness. So these are some things that I do. And I don't know, do you have any questions or comments?
To add to that, so about an experience that I had, and I actually do a lot of driving. I've probably driven over 1,000,000 miles, including flying. And one of the reasons why I love driving over flying when I travel is just like you said, it really gives you the opportunity to experience everything that you're seeing as you're going through it. Because when you're flying, oftentimes you're not the one in the driver's seat, so you're not really paying attention to anything that's going on besides just like oftentimes in flights, you're thinking, cramped space. But when you're driving, it really, I mean, there's so much to see and so much to experience, and just being able to like be there. But there, I've through a lot of my transitions in driving, I have broken down numerous times in my car. And one particular time I broke down, it was actually in Phoenix, and it was on 19th Ave in Bell. And it was on a day where it was early in the morning and it was raining.
Yeah.
And I believe my alternator gave out.
Mhm.
I love to practice the state of presence because it gives me the opportunity to think like that without having to overanalyze or even overreact
Mhm.
when something like that happens. And so I broke down in the middle of the street where it was heavy traffic and it was raining. So you can imagine how anybody probably would go into a state of panic. And so it just really gave me the opportunity to observe what was happening. I got on the phone, I called my insurance, I was able
Mhm.
to get somebody to come out, and it was going to be about 45 minutes. And it was almost as though time stopped. Nobody was honking at me. I got out of my car and went to the back. I had my hazards on so that obviously nobody would, run into me. But I had strangers out of nowhere come and help me.
Mhm.
And it was like, when you think that when these things are happening, oftentimes we go in a state of reactivity and then we end up panicking and then nothing happens. Like people don't show up for you. But when you're in a state of flow, you're really able to observe the situation as it's happening, and you would be surprised at how the universe will just show up for you, and you
It
don't really
does.
have to work. You don't have to work as hard as you do when you're overthinking and over analyzing
It's
everything.
so true. Yeah, we get in our own way when we do. I excuse my language, but I call it stupid shit. We do stupid shit when we are overanalyzing and trying to figure it out and using our heads. Like you said, you could have panicked in that situation, but instead, because you stayed present, it was like literally you were guided, and the right people showed up, and the right things happened at the right time, and yeah, I mean, I have a similar story. My husband and I were driving from Page, Arizona to Kayenta, Arizona, and it's a very desolate road. There's like nothing, no stores, no gas stations, no nothing for quite some time. And he looks over at me, and I don't know if I'm getting this right, but I think what he said is, "Honey, I hate to tell you this, but my alternator isn't charging the battery." And I went, at first. And I thought, no, surrender, just stay present. We'll know what to do. And we both did. And it was literally like we were guided. We knew what to do. There was a car in front of us. My husband turned off the lights so as not to use up the battery and or the energy. And again, I don't know how cars work. So, and the only time he turned them on was when oncoming traffic was coming. You know, the people in front of us probably thought we were psycho stalkers. Like, what are these people behind us turning their lights off and on? But we finally roll into town and we get to the hotel. And in the meantime, we've been very conscious about staying very present and not getting in our heads about this. We went to a hotel and there were 5 stations where we could register to stay at the hotel. And both of us beelined right to this one. And my husband looks at the girl and says, do you know a mechanic? And the girl says, do I know a mechanic? My father's a mechanic and he's coming to pick me up in a half hour.
Oh, wow.
Now, we could have gone to any of those other stations and we would not have found a mechanic. But we just like right to that one. How did we know? Coincidence? I don't think so. And we continued to stay present. And the mechanic came down to our room. It turned out it was just a loose wire. And my husband looks at me and goes, oh my gosh, that was a miracle. How did that happen so effortlessly, so easily, so that we just like knew what to do? And this is what happens with presence.
It does. It literally, you're finding solutions as you go, and you don't really have to create the solutions in your head before it happens. When you're in the state of flow, these ideas are literally coming to you. People are showing up. These opportunities are literally falling on your lap, and you're literally allowing yourself to walk through these experiences with ease. And I use that word a lot because I mean, it's really helped me through a lot of the experiences that I've had. I've had about 17 transitions through my life and moving from state to state, a lot of times without, anybody helping me through this process. But it seems as though the people that I needed to show up for me, even if it wasn't people that I knew, were there at the right time, and it was exactly what I needed. And when I found myself in not presence, I found myself trying to maneuver through these things with so much anxiety, right? And it's just it is a practice. It's a daily practice to get yourself in this state of flow, because oftentimes as humans, we like to have control over everything.
Mm-hmm. Yes, except for that, we want certainty. Only certainty does not exist.
It doesn't exist.
Knowing does not exist. I want to know, I need to know. Well, sorry, you can't. So, because it just doesn't work that way. And so if you can trust in the presence, then you just know that everything will just flow exactly as it needs to. And sometimes that isn't how the ego wants it. But again, if you trust it, you know that it's always flowing exactly as it needs to. And so I love presence and I love to practice it as much as I possibly can. I recommend to everybody that you read The Power of Now and start to make it a practice. And I don't know, I think that's all I have to say about that.
Absolutely. It is the perfect way to allow your days to unfold again with so much ease. And everything that needs to be a part of your life will. And literally our life, and I hate to sound so morbid, but our life can end in a split second. And we never want to be in that place where we're always trying to control the outcome, because we never will. And we're always going to be in a state of anxiety, in a state of panic, in stress mode all the time if we continue to live our life that way.
Well,
So
I'm trying to always figure things out.
absolutely. Yeah. Or even just controlling the outcome of other people, how other people react and how other people respond, because again, that's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is to just be in the now so that we are observing and responding in a state of presence
and effortlessness.
effortlessly.
Yeah. May I share one other thing?
Absolutely.
Being in the now versus not being in the now is kind of like being in do have be versus be do have. So do have be is how much of us operate. If I do enough, then I'll finally have enough, and then I can be. Versus be do have. If I am in a state of being, which presence brings you into, then whatever I need to do will just arise naturally and effortlessly and flow through me, and then I'll have everything.
Mhm. And we have everything we need right here and right now.
Mhm.
So just to reiterate some of the points, and maybe they're a little bit different, but I want to end with this so that you have this in your mind as this conversation comes to an end. So to be in the power of now, take a few deep conscious breaths in and out, in from your belly, and you feel it all the way through your chest, in through the nose, out through the mouth. And I usually like to take a deep breath in, hold it in for 4 seconds, and then out through the mouth 3 seconds. And it really gives you the opportunity to feel what Bonnie was saying inside of your body. You're literally feeling everything that's happening inside your body. And feel your hands, feel the energy within them, because honestly, we are frequency. You can put your hands together or even with another person, and you can feel the energy just flowing through you. And just be in your body, feel your body, because our body is such a miraculous living organism that heals itself when you give it what it needs. And so when you feel it, you appreciate it, you acknowledge it for everything that it is, it really does bring you in the state of presence. Try to listen to the silence around you, and even the birds chirping, the wind blowing, the sun shining on your face. When you're just in the state of appreciation for all of that, it already is, again, brings you right back to now. And accept everything and everyone as it is and how they are, because that really gives you an opportunity to, again, be in the now. You've no control over anything that's happening around you. All you have is the mindfulness of your breath, and that's it. And then just try to observe your own mind, not necessarily silence it, because sometimes it's a little bit challenging to completely shut it off completely. But observing what's going on and speaking powerful words of affirmation, focusing more on the positive aspects of what's happening instead of all the negative things that's happening, again, will bring you back into a state of appreciation and presence. So thank you so much for joining us in on this conversation, on these important conversations that we should be having all the time, because although we may feel like we're living in a state of negativity, or there's just so much noise going on around in the world, when you bring yourself back to this present moment, you'll realize that everything is in perfect form. So thank you again. I am sending you so much love and light, and we will see you next time. Blessings.